Hi, this is Mike. Let's talk about the wrist snap on the serve. Now you see a whole lot of teaching pros online will be telling you there's no wrist snap on the serve. And then they'll demonstrate a flip, which is not a wrist snap. It has nothing to do with a wrist snap. No, you shouldn't go like this when you serve. Duh. Okay? There are people who do it, but yeah, no, it's not the right thing to do. We don't even have to think about that. The question is, do we snap our wrist on the serve? And yes, we do. We absolutely snap our wrist on the serve. So how do we demonstrate this? Okay, what's the best way to demonstrate? Well, let's start with throwing. Let's start with a snap throw. Okay, if I'm an outfielder, okay, I'm going to throw like this. My arm's going to reach back, and I'm going to come here, and then if I had any flexibility, my arm would lay back, and I'd follow through out here. Okay, that works in the outfield because I've got time and I'm throwing the ball over a long distance. So the most important thing is how fast I can throw the ball. So I maximize how much my arm lays back by reaching back here and getting that much more motion into it. Now, if I'm in the infield and I've got my throw has to beat somebody to first base, there are a lot of times, if it isn't that long a throw, that what I need to do is make my motion very quick. So I make a snap throw. How do I do that? I bring the arm here, and then I snap there. Well, what happens when I do that? Okay, does my wrist go like this? No. What my wrist does on a snap throw is I get it into extension. Here, my wrist is in extension. Then I come here and I throw. This lays back, once again, doesn't lay back much because I'm old. Okay, my wrist is in extension, and then it snaps to about here. It's not even all the way to here, it's here, but that's the snap. That's where the snap happens, right there. Okay, the same thing happens when we serve. All right, we get here, and we'll just do the same kind of thing. Okay, I'm right there. Let me give you a little better view of that probably. Okay, right there in extension. I come here, and ideally I'm here, and now I come to here, and I don't even get fully there. Now, there's a lot of people who will tell you, oh no, what you're doing is, this would be the ulnar deviation. Radial deviation, ulnar deviation, right? They'll tell you that's what you're doing. But you know what? This really doesn't go very far. It's maybe 20, 25 degrees. What's really happening is my wrist is in flexion, in extension, and then it goes in flexion almost to neutral. That's what's really happening. It feels, and I feel the same thing, I feel like I'm doing this to get the racket to go up on edge, right? I feel like that's what I'm doing, but what I'm really doing is snapping my wrist, okay? Now, the next thing they'll tell you is that, well, okay, but you aren't really snapping your wrist, you aren't using your muscles, it's just, you know, your arm going back and forth like this. Well, there's a scientific term for that. It's called bullshit, okay? Here's what really happens. Let's just go back to the simple throw. I go here, my wrist is in extension, and all these muscles, the extensors, are really pulling that wrist back. And by doing that, they stretch my flexor tendons, my flexor muscles and my flexor tendons. So when I throw, these muscles release, and these are already pre-stretched, and so they start make this motion faster. They turn it from a flip into a snap. All right, so it's the muscles happening. So then they'll say, well, yeah, but it's the loading that you get from, you know, the earlier parts of the serve, and that's true. You do have to load it into extension, but believe me, this muscle is firing, and it's firing big time, and it's adding to the speed of your serve. So what's the next argument they'll come up with? Well, you know, it's all about being relaxed, and you can't teach that to beginners. You know, you got to be relaxed. Why do you have to be relaxed? on the serve. And you do. You want to be relaxed on the serve. You want to be relaxed on the serve because we want this to go back as far as possible. So this has to be as relaxed as possible. These shoulder muscles, specifically the extensors, we have to let them stretch as far as possible. Well, guess what? If I have a tight grip on this, these muscles all tighten up and I can't go back. Loosen it up and it goes back. Therefore, I load up into external rotation more, pre-stretch the internal rotators, and then I can internal rotate. And the internal rotation is the main source of power on the serve. You know, the legs drive up, which pulls the arm down, pre-stretches the internal rotators, and then we release those driving up. The internal rotators fire, the wrist fires, and we get our serve. All right? So yes, there is a wrist snap on the serve. Now, the other thing they'll tell you, one more. Well, you know, you can't teach that to beginners. It should all be just a flow and relaxed. Once again, bullshit. How many beginners do you know who get into an ideal racket drop, drive up, and have the racket at full racket drop as they leave the ground, and then snap through? I don't know many people that do. How about seniors? Okay? I get up here, and you won't be able to see it, and it won't really matter, and I drive as hard as I can, and I get about 2 inches off the ground. Okay? We're not adding as much as we'd like to. Okay? So, what happens when you can't do that? The arm takes over. And you consciously, because you didn't get as far down here, and you don't have as much here, you consciously snap up. If you're a beginner, you're definitely not getting in those positions. You're definitely not getting the pre-stretch. So what do you need to learn to do as a beginner? You need to learn to snap up. Just like that, on edge, and then do that. It's very simple, okay? This is what we need to do. We need to snap the wrist. It's an important part of learning as we're beginners, and then it becomes an unconscious movement. We don't have to think about it, that we do later in life until we get old, and sometimes we have to add a little extra snap to get the spin or the speed that we need. It's not good for our arms, but it's the reality of being old. All right? Thank you. Yes, you do. Snap on the serve.